The market is upset because the government didn't smash by, a couple 100,000 Bitcoin and other assets as well. That was never a realistic expectation. We need to step back and realize that the U.S. government just said that Bitcoin is a strategic asset that shall not be sold, and that crypto deserves to be in a stockpile. That's the kind of words, that's the kind of framing that leads to a multi-year bull market. I think eventually the market will wake up and realize that it's incredibly bullish. We're sort of getting overwhelmed right now by bearish news in the broader economy that I think is trickling over into the crypto space. But to me, that's creating what's going to be a coiled spring in crypto. There's just so much good news being ignored right now that once the sentiment turns, I think we're going to move quite fast to the upside.
Matt Hougan begins by addressing the broader macroeconomic environment. He notes that the Trump administration appeared to be strategically pressuring Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell to pivot towards more accommodative monetary policy. This, according to Hougan, aligns with a broader global trend where central banks are increasingly cutting rates to counteract economic uncertainty. The message is clear. Recessions are no longer acceptable policy outcomes. Governments and central banks will step in with aggressive rate cuts and fiscal stimulus whenever economic weakness emerges. This policy approach has significant implications for financial markets. If central banks continue to intervene aggressively, it creates a floor for risk assets, including equities and crypto. Investors should recognize that while short-term volatility may persist, the long-term trajectory remains bullish, particularly for assets that benefit from monetary debasement, such as Bitcoin.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
I think that's what the Trump administration is hoping for, right? They are hoping to force a pivot from Powell. I think they're hoping to, create space for the economy to bottom and turn around. I wouldn't be surprised if we've seen it. We've seen it around the world. We continue to see central banks cutting rates to reflect the uncertainty elicited by the tariff regimes. My core view, as you know, Paul, is that the U.S. has outlawed recessions, and most governments around the world have effectively outlawed recessions. So I do think as soon as we see the economy wobble, we're going to see people come in with interest rate and fiscal support to shore that up. And sure enough, that will be a positive for the market as well. Yeah, I actually think it's a great thing for crypto, not just a good thing for crypto. The market is upset because the government didn't smash by, a couple 100,000 Bitcoin and other assets as well. That was never a realistic expectation. We need to step back and realize that the U.S. government just said that Bitcoin is a strategic asset that shall not be sold, and that crypto deserves to be in a stockpile. That's the kind of words, that's the kind of framing that leads to a multi-year bull market. I think eventually the market will wake up and realize that it's incredibly bullish. We're sort of getting overwhelmed right now by bearish news in the broader economy that I think is trickling over into the crypto space. But to me, that's creating what's going to be a coiled spring in crypto. There's just so much good news being ignored right now that once the sentiment turns, I think we're going to move quite fast to the upside. This is the other thing that I think the market is misreading here. If you're in another country and you're looking at the US saying this is an important reserve, you're looking at the US, which may consider selling some gold to buy Bitcoin or to build a bigger crypto reserve, I don't see how you stand pat. Right? I don't see how, if you're Russia, if you're China, if you're India, if you're smaller countries and you're watching your peers move in this space, if you're Saudi Arabia looking at, Abu Dhabi allocating to Bitcoin, do you really want to take the chance that you're wrong, that this becomes a really important asset? You almost have to or are encouraged to start allocating, start building a strategy, maybe even to front run the US buying a digital Bitcoin, maybe do it fast. So, our expectation at Bitwise is we're going to see the number of countries holding Bitcoin double this year. we're inside the US, so we're thinking about this with a great deal of nuance, with our political biases, etc. Outside the US, the president of the United States of America, the largest country, the largest economy in the world, just said Bitcoin's a strategic asset. I don't think you're going to ignore that. I think it would be foolish. It would be potentially a historic mistake. So I do think there'll be a global arms race to position in this asset, and ultimately that'll benefit crypto investors across the spectrum. Bitcoin and ETH, that makes it much easier. Between those two, I think Bitcoin is incredibly well positioned. The thing people overlook in the executive order is it directed the secretaries of Commerce and Treasury that they shall investigate ways to increase the government's position in Bitcoin as long as it's done in a budget neutral perspective. I actually think the word shall means a lot there. I expect the US government to actually be buying Bitcoin by the end of the year. And I think the market just sort of read right past that. I know there is significant demand. I think you can't rule it out. You look at the top 4+ crypto assets, and they're firms making major strategic bets on those assets and building reserves and building in that ecosystem. XRP is certainly one of them, alongside Solana and ETH and Bitcoin. And I don't think investors should count out any of those assets becoming or really emerging as geopolitically important and strategically important for companies and countries around the world. I think they're major parts of the future. I think there are a lot of crypto investors, actually. I think the initial money that would be most interested in that is crypto investors who have a long-term position in these assets, but want to generate some amount of income to live off of and pay their bills, etc. That's where I think the bulk of the interest would be. I think we're a ways away from competing on yield challenging money market funds. But, sort of the history of commodity-based investing and crypto fits into that scheme is one of the knocks on it. One of the knocks on holding gold historically is you can't generate income from that. To the extent that staking allows crypto assets to remove that impediment, it should increase the amount of allocation to that space. So it's something that I hope happens. It's something that I think will happen. And it will definitely make this, on the edges more attractive for investors.
Regulatory restrictions have hindered DeFi tokens from fully monetizing their value propositions. Many DeFi projects were forced to operate as governance tokens rather than revenue-generating businesses. However, as regulatory landscapes evolve, Hougan expects a shift toward more sustainable tokenomics that will unlock substantial economic value for DeFi protocols. Another crucial factor in DeFi's resurgence is user experience. In the past, DeFi applications were complex and difficult to use. Now, with advancements in Layer 2 scaling solutions and improved interfaces, DeFi platforms are becoming more accessible. This ease of use will likely drive a surge in adoption, potentially leading to another DeFi summer, a period of explosive growth for decentralized applications and protocols.
I think the market would love it, right? I do think, from my 30,000-foot view, specific to XRP, I think there is a significant chunk of the crypto market that has sort of written it off or forgotten about it. And I think that part of the market is wrong. I think the reality is XRP has been, suppressed by litigation for multiple years, and we don't yet know what it can do on the global stage when it's sort of freed from those restraints. And I think if we get full clarity and we can now see true business development opportunity in the US and abroad without that sort of Damocles hanging over it, then I think we'll see what XRP can do in the market. I don't think there's any guarantee it will be enormously successful, but there's equally no guarantee that it won't be, right? And I think anyone who sort of proclaims one or the other is wrong at this point. So I think the market would react very well to that day when and if it comes. And then I think it'd be an exciting year to follow, see how it does. I actually think where the benefit will come will be normalizing US regulation and tax policy to the best state of what it is around the world. So just getting to neutral will allow the US to be the absolute leader in this space. We have the best tech community, the best developer community, the best venture investing community, the best retail investing community. So as long as we can align with global standards, I think we'll be set to win. We don't need any protectionist tariffs or unique sort of benefits from my point of view. We just need a level playing field. We haven't had that for the last 4 years. I think we're well on our way to getting that with the actions we're seeing from the SEC and hopefully we'll see from Congress. And if we do, I think you're going to see, US built crypto apps, protocols, and investment vehicles really thrive in the market. I think that's absolutely right. I actually think we're on the cusp of a DeFi renaissance, both from a utility perspective and from an investment perspective. From a utility perspective, it's just proven through very volatile markets that it works enormously well, whether that's trading or lending or other things. It's more robust than centralized exchanges, often cheaper and more reliable in many ways. From an investment perspective, the big challenge that DeFi has faced historically is that regulators made it very hard for a DeFi asset to actually accrue value. If it was anything more than a weak governance token, it was effectively illegal. And so you have all these poor tokenomic designs embedded into these DeFi protocols. I expect as regulation changes, you're going to see that switch. You're going to see much more direct monetization. And then investors are going to realize that these assets are substantially undervalued versus the economic value that they're delivering to their customers. You look at something like, Uniswap doing $70-80 billion of trading volume. That's an enormously valuable business with very low overhead. Yeah. I think once we get the tokenomics right, I think there'll be a repricing of DeFi. And then I think there'll be a dramatic expansion of use as well. So I'm very bullish on the DeFi space over the next 12 to 24 months. Yeah, 100%. I'm glad you touched on that because that speaks to the third revolution that makes me so excited about DeFi in the future, which is this user experience revolution. The reason that wasn't true in the past is these things were clunky. They were hard to use. You had fractured layer twos, et cetera. It was hard to move assets. It was a mess. And all that's getting abstracted away. You gave the Robinhood example, but there are multiple examples of that being abstracted away. And all of a sudden it's very easy to use. And I think that will 10x usage. I mean, that chart is a great example of what we talked about earlier, which is that opportunity lies between reality and perception. I think the perception of DeFi is that it's still dead. We haven't come back from the DeFi summer of a few years ago. That's just not true, right? You're showing it. The volumes are through the roof. The utility is through the roof. And I think eventually the market will wake up to this reality and it's going to be DeFi Summer 2.0. I mean, just look at that chart, right? It's one of the most beautiful charts in finance. And it shows you that investors are increasingly relying on this as their primary vehicle for trading.
The final piece of the puzzle is regulatory clarity. Hougan stresses that for the U.S. to maintain leadership in crypto, it does not need preferential policies, just a level playing field. The country already boasts the world's best tech community, most sophisticated investors, and strongest venture capital ecosystem. If the regulatory environment aligns with global standards, the U.S. could become the undisputed leader in crypto innovation. The recent actions by the SEC and potential upcoming moves from Congress signal that the U.S. is heading in the right direction. If these trends continue, we could see a flood of institutional capital into crypto markets, driving another major expansion phase for the industry. Please like and subscribe.